In this video, I want to take some time to study what has been the opening range breakout personality amidst this entire volatile period that we've seen over the past few months. In particular, we're going to look at the past 90-day stats here, the backtest stats, to understand what is the performance of the opening range breakout. We're going to splice and dice this through a few different metrics, and I'm going to focus my attention for today's video on the S&P 100. I'll start by first looking at the two different strategies we have. We have the actual morning breakout, and then we have a pullback to the breakout. We're going to see which one works better, the pullback or the morning breakout. We're going to look at this both in terms of strategy, then we'll break this down by symbol. After we see if there's one particular symbol that stands out or maybe a group of symbols, we'll move on to time-based analysis, and then finally take a look to see if it's been longs or shorts which have been better for the opening range breakout setup. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is the strategy performance. And again, this is inside of only the S&P 100. First thing to stand out, on the left we have the breakouts, on the right we have the pullback strategy. So the two different strategies. In both, you should notice a positive P&L. You can see that with this green histogram bar that's above zero. And you should notice that the win rate in the breakout strategy is a little bit greater than 50%, and in the pullback strategy is a little bit less than 50%. Now, what should stand out is even though we're less than 50%, take a look at the P&L numbers here. The P&L numbers in both are green, suggesting that your risk-reward ratio here must be skewed. That's the only explanation. And that's what it is. That's why I really like this pullback setup. A lot of the trades are risking 1 to make 2, and that's where having a 48% win rate is perfectly fine, especially when there you layer on things like a 70% win rate with our filters to find the best trades. So the first thing I want to call out here is the effectiveness of the pullback strategy in spite of a less than 50% win rate. It gives you an idea of the skewed risk to reward trade. And you'll see there's a lot of trades being analyzed for each of these reports. So it's a large sample size. Now we break this down in terms of the 5, the 15, and the 30-minute opening ranges. These are the 3 opening ranges we support. Let's see if there's one in particular that stands out. Now on the 5-minute, 52, 53, and 53-ish% for the breakouts across the board, positive P&L. And on the pullbacks, you should notice slightly below 50%, with the 5-minute really taking the lead in terms of the highest number here, but really comparable across the board. So 5, 15, and 30-minute, all very comparable with this strategy. Gives you the green light that you're in the clear in the S&P 100 as long as you find the right symbols to focus on. So that takes us to splice number 2, which is the top symbols. Now at the top of this list here, first off, before we even get into the numbers, we know that on the whole, if you traded every single trade inside of the ORB setup for the S&P 100, even though you might have had a win rate slightly above 50%, your overall P&L would have been positive. Now you come in to actually take a look at the individual tickers driving a lot of this performance, and you'll see at the top, you have a lot of the more expensive names, and this makes sense. Eli Lilly, Netflix, Meta, United Health, Tesla, IBM, Starbucks, Apple. You have a few that stand out here, but mostly names that you should recognize and names that I think you would expect to see having strong opening range breakouts. You will find some hidden gems in here, like, say, the IBMs, where you should notice that the win rate is slightly higher than the group of stocks they're with. Another one is Starbucks. So these are the ones I want to make note of. I really want to just write these down every single weekend because that tells me that these are a handful of stocks which are outperforming. So when I see them on our live scanner, for example, that tells me I have a little bit more bias towards those particular stocks, like the Starbucks, for example, with its pullback today, which was a nice winner. Now, the next thing that we can do outside of just looking at this from symbols is take a look at this with time-based analysis. This is where I think it gets really interesting. Now we're going to start with first the day of week, and then we're going to look at this by hour of day. An hour of day is mostly for the pullback strategy. Now when we look at this on day of week, we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Notice how Tuesday, Wednesday, you should notice that the breakout strategy, the P&L goes negative. This is over the past 3 months where Tuesday, Wednesdays have not really been all that lucrative if you traded every single trade. On the flip side, that pullback strategy on these days has been fairly solid. That's been one with a positive P&L histogram bar. In fact, if you look at the 5 days here, 4 out of the 5 days, the pullback strategy has done quite well in this volatility. So that gives you an idea of how you can still take advantage of this volatility. You're just patiently waiting throughout the day for the right pullback opportunities. Monday, it seems like breakouts are the way to go, along with Thursdays right before the end of the week. So Mondays, Thursdays for breakouts. Rest of the week, Tuesdays through Fridays, pullbacks are looking fairly solid. Now we look at this on hour of day. An hour of day is not all that useful for breakouts, mostly because we have the breakouts happening when the actual morning breakouts take place, the first 2 hours. But these pullbacks are quite interesting because they take place and they occur sporadically throughout the day, even in the final tail hours. So that gives you a way to take this morning opening range breakout scanner, simply apply the pullback filter, and now find trades throughout the day. So that's one way to turn this live scanner now into your running watch list of trades throughout the entire day instead of just the morning breakouts. And finally, we end this with a directional bias view. So we're now trying to see longs or shorts. What's interesting here is both the longs and shorts have had a positive P&L with a mostly comparable win rate. So there's not really one that stands out. Both have had a similar sample count in terms of the total trade size. So that gives you an idea that there's really no bias, longs or shorts. It's more about taking advantage of the volatility, finding these patterns like the ones we saw with the days of week, finding the symbols you want to trade. I use the S&P 100, but you can create your own watch list as well if you want to analyze your own group of stocks and use that to really find what is the strategy that's working. There is one strategy always out there working in these symbols, and what you find with this opening range breakout setup is it's a beautiful setup which triggers almost every single day in a wide basket of stocks, the ones you care to trade. The trick is finding the actual trades you want to focus on, and that's where the scanner comes in, but a lot of it starts with doing the research every single weekend. I hope you found this video helpful, and for all ORB members, I hope you found this video helpful in learning how to use the new reporting functionality. I've added a few more slots at our launch discount for those of you that tried to join last week but couldn't. Take advantage of it if this is something you find interesting. I'll add more spots as we continue to scale up. Take care, everyone. Good luck trading, and I'll see you in our next update.